I heard the President's address. I sat there with Kharge ji and I listened to it. And I must say, I struggled through the President's address to maintain my attention on what was being said. Because I had heard pretty much the same President's address the last time and the time before that and the time before that. And it was the same laundry list of things that the government has done. We have done this, we have done this, we have done this, 50 or 100 things that the government has done. And so while I was sitting there, I was thinking, okay, I am being critical about what is being said. And I am saying that this is not the type of President's address that should be delivered. Well, the question came to my mind, what type of address would an India Gathbandhan government deliver? How would that address be different than the address we heard? Because it's no point me saying that it is a laundry list and then not providing an alternative idea. And so today I would like to lay out some dimensions of what an alternative address would look like, what the India Gathbandhan would probably focus on, and where we would lay emphasis. The future of this country is going to be decided by the young men and women of this country, the youth of this country. So I think anything we say has to be addressed to them, has to be spoken to them. The first thing in front of us, and this is something I'm sure the Prime Minister would accept, and pretty much everybody in this room will accept, is that even though we have grown fast, we are growing slightly slower now, but we are still growing. A universal problem that we have faced is that we have not been able to tackle the problem of unemployment. No, neither the UPA government nor today's NDA government has given a clear-cut answer to the youth of India about employment. I don't think anybody in this room will disagree with me. I'll give a little statistic for the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, something I would agree with directionally. The Prime Minister proposed the Make in India program. I think a good idea. We saw the statues, we saw the functions, we saw the so-called investment, and the result is right in front of me. Manufacturing fell from 15.3% of GDP in 2014 to 12.6% of GDP today. That is the lowest share of manufacturing in 60 years. I'm not even blaming the Prime Minister, because I think it would not be fair to say he didn't try. I could say that the Prime Minister tried, and I think conceptually Make in India was a good idea, but it's pretty clear that he failed, because manufacturing went from 15.3% of GDP to 12.6%. So the first question that any alternative vision would answer to the youngsters of our country is, okay, what and how are we going to solve this problem of employment? Any country basically organizes two things. You can organize consumption, and then you can organize production. Modern way of saying organizing consumption is services. Modern way of saying organizing production is manufacturing. But there is more to production than simply manufacturing. For example, agriculture also is about production. Now, pretty much every government since 1990 has done a decent job on consumption, on organizing consumption. Which are the companies that organize consumption? Uber organizes consumption. Reliance organizes consumption. Adani organizes consumption. But we have, as a country, failed in organizing production. We have excellent companies that try to organize production. They are the Mahindras of this world. They are the Bajajs of this world. Part of Tata's organizes production, but the record of the country in organizing production is dismal. And essentially what we have done is we have handed over the organization of production to the Chinese. So this mobile phone, even though we are saying we make this mobile phone in India, that is not a fact. This phone is not made in India. This phone is assembled in India. All the components of this phone are made in China. The network that has produced this phone is made in China, is owned by China. So every time we use a phone, every time we wear a Chinese shirt, a Bangladeshi shirt, every time we wear a pair of Chinese sneakers, we are paying a tax to China. Because some Chinese youngster is earning a salary to make or to produce that product. So the first message I would give in a presidential address would be that India has to focus completely on production. Because if we do not focus on production and we continue to focus only on consumption, we will find that we will run huge deficits, we will increase inequality, and eventually we will run into a serious problem. Social problem because of unemployment, which we are already facing. If you look at the numbers of the amount of people who are in jail, if you look at the numbers that are spent on internal security, if you look at the numbers spent on our police forces, they're all spiraling. They're all rising. And everybody understands that social tension is on the rise in India. So now the next question comes, okay, so where is this employment going to come from? What is India going to produce? And for that, I'd like to tell all the youngsters of this country that there is a revolution taking place, an exciting revolution. The world is transforming completely. And the change that is taking place, at the heart of the change that is taking place, we are moving from the world of the internal combustion engine to the world of the electric motor. We are moving from petrol to batteries. We are moving wind, solar, potentially nuclear energy. So our entire way of moving is changing. And this is going to change every single thing. It is going to change warfare. It is going to change medical treatment. It is going to change education. It is going to change how we eat. It is going to change every single thing. Now, the last time there was a revolution called the computer revolution, the government of India had a clear focus. We looked at that revolution. It was the Congress government. We looked at the revolution and we decided clearly that we are going to focus on the development of software. And we rode the wave of that revolution. And today you can see the result. I remember people laughing. I remember people laughing when the computer was being talked about. You mentioned Mr. Vajpayee. I respect Mr. Vajpayee, but Mr. Vajpayee gave a speech saying that computers are of no consequence to India. So, what is important when there is a revolution? What is important is that you understand what are the drivers of that revolution and where exactly do you need to focus, where exactly do you need to sit in that revolution. I said that this revolution is going to change everything. And I want the youngsters in this country to think about it. There is a war going on in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine is actually a war between the internal combustion engine and the motor, the electric motor. The electric motor is inside the drone, the engine is inside the tank. And if you look at what is going on in Ukraine, the tanks are dying by the thousands. And small little drones with electric motors, small batteries, not much bigger than that, are destroying the entire tank artillery infrastructure of both Ukraine and Russia. So the drone is the electric motor. The drone is the battery. The drone also needs to see. So the drone is a camera. In the same way, electric cars, the electric car is a motor. The electric car is batteries. The electric car is cameras. Robots are exactly the same thing. Robots are electric motors, multiple electric motors with cameras, with batteries. And this is what the revolution is going to look like. So there are basically 4 technologies that are driving this entire change in mobility. Electric motors, batteries, optics, and then on top of that, you can apply AI. Now people, I want to tell the youngsters of this country, people talk about AI. But it's important to understand that AI on its own is absolutely meaningless. Because AI operates on top of data. Without data, AI means nothing. And if we look at data today, there is one thing which is very clear. Every single piece of data that comes out of the production system in the world, the data that was used to make this phone, the data that is used to make electric cars, the data that is used to make basically all electronics on the planet today is owned by China. And the consumption data is owned by the United States. In China, the consumption data is owned by China, but in India, companies like Google, companies like Facebook, companies like Instagram, X, they own our consumption data. So if India wants to talk about AI, it has to first answer the question, what data is going to power that AI? And the answer today is India does not have that data. Neither does India have production data, neither does India have consumption data. We have handed our consumption data to the big American companies, and the production data we don't have anyway. So what would that vision look like? The first thing, we would start getting youngsters excited about this revolution. We would start to introduce the idea of a completely new way of moving, a complete revolution in how things move. We would start teaching our children in schools about batteries, about electric motors, about how these things combine, about how drones, robots, electric cars are structured, how they will work together. And most important, we have to start building a production network so that we can get access to production data. Now, what would we focus on? We would not give you a laundry list. China has at least a 10-year lead on India in this space. China has been working on batteries, robots, motors, optics for the last 10 years, and we are behind. So what would our president's address say to the youngsters? We will choose critical areas in each one of these technologies, and we will start to build capabilities in those areas. The second thing we would do, we would ensure that our banking system is not captured by 2 or 3 companies that basically do not allow you to build a production system. But our banking system is open, is dynamic, and is accessible to small and medium businesses and to millions and millions of entrepreneurs who want to take part in this revolution. Our foreign policy would take into account this revolution. When we talk to the United States, we would not send our foreign minister to invite our Prime Minister to his coronation. We would not send him 3 or 4 times, please invite our Prime Minister. Because if we had a production system and if we were working on these technologies, the American president would come here and invite the Prime Minister. So it is important to understand where
Please.
Foreign policy. Leader of opposition cannot make such serious, unsubstantiated statement. This is related to the relation between two countries, and he is making an unverified statement about invitation of the Prime Minister of our country. It's matter of our dignity. How can you make such kind of statement? He's leader of opposition, sir. He should be responsible in making such statement. Sir.
LOP is giving us very positive suggestions. Why they are worried, sir? For the country, he is giving.
Leader of opposition has the information from any official source. He must inform the House. If leader of opposition has the information, please inform the House.
Okay.
Who has told you that foreign ministers visited for the purpose which you have mentioned? You must specify it.
So, I'm sorry that disturbed you, that question. I apologize for disturbing your peace of mind. It's okay. I've apologized. I've apologized for disturbing your peace of mind. I'm sorry.
Apologize for lying to the House. ऐसा नहीं होता है. तो सीरियस होना चाहिए लीडर ऑफ अपोजिशन को. कम से कम देश के मामले में तो एक हो. देश के मामले में तो एक वॉइस से बोलना चाहिए. ये गलत बात है. ये ठीक नहीं है. लीडर ऑफ अपोजिशन को इस तरह का बयानबाजी नहीं करना चाहिए. ये गंभीर विषय पर चर्चा चल रही है. इसका गौरव विषय है.
So we would start by telling our young men and women that they have to be at the forefront of this revolution. We cannot afford that the Chinese are at the forefront of this revolution. Number one. Number two, we would ensure that the absolute best experts on these technologies would talk to our students, would talk to our youngsters and guide them on what a future, on what these future technologies are going to do. We would make them partners in this revolution. Now, we talk about defense. And today, we have the Chinese. And the Prime Minister has denied it. And the army has contradicted the Prime Minister. It's true. The Prime Minister has denied it. The Prime Minister has denied it. And the army has disagreed with the Prime Minister that China is sitting on 4,000 square kilometers of our land, of our territory.
ऐसा इस सदन में अब मन चाहे बात नहीं बोल सकते हैं. ये बिल्कुल ठीक नहीं है सर. ये सीरियस मामला है. आप फॉरेन पॉलिसी पे, बॉर्डर इश्यू पर आप अपना कैसे मजाक बात कर सकते हैं? अपना मन मरण कहानी आप बना के बोल रहे हैं. ये तो बहुत सीरियस मामला है.
विदेशी प्रतिपक्ष के नेता जो आप विषय बोल रहे हैं, उसके तथ्यों को
Let me speak.
सदन के पटल पे रखना. आप
पानी.
अनुरोध है लीडर ऑफ अपोजिशन बोले, हम लोग शांति से सुनेंगे. ये आपका अधिकार है बोलने का, मगर आप मन चाहे ऐसा सीरियस इशू पे कैसे बोल सकते हैं? ये सीरियस मामला है.
आप सदन में बोल रहे हैं,
से बोलते हो. फॉरेन मिनिस्टर का मुश्किल देते हो. सीमा का बात ऑफिशियल वर्जन से अलग बात करते हैं. ऐसा मत बोलिए. ये देश के लिए ठीक नहीं है. आपको सीरियस होना पड़ेगा लीडर ऑफ अपोजिशन. ये गंभीर मामले को आप ऐसा
The Prime Minister has denied that Chinese forces are inside our territory, but for some reason, our army keeps talking to the Chinese about their entry into our territory, and our Chief of Army Staff has said that the Chinese are inside our territory. This is a fact. This is not invention, this is a fact. Now, but the reason China is inside our territory is important. Because people think that wars are fought between armies and their weapons. But the fact of the matter is that wars are fought by industrial systems. The fact of the matter is that China has an industrial system that is far stronger, far bigger than our industrial system. And that is why they have the guts to come inside this country. The reason China is sitting inside this country is because Make in India has failed. The reason China is sitting inside this country is because India is refusing to produce. And I'm worried that India is going to give up this revolution to the Chinese once again. The reason I made this reference is because everything is connected. If and when we fight a war with China, we will be fighting with Chinese electric motors, Chinese batteries, Chinese optics, and we will be buying Chinese motors, Chinese optics, Chinese batteries. It is a non-sustainable proposition. That is why for our security, for the future of our children, for the future of our country, we have to build a production system, and we cannot allow this revolution to go by. Now, the next step, we have a strategic partner called the United States. The partnership should focus on how India and the United States can work together to take advantage of this revolution. That is what the conversation should be on. Please understand that India is as important as the United States for the simple reason that they cannot build an industrial system without us. They cannot build a production system without us. No matter what they say, the Americans simply cannot do what India can do because their cost structure is much, much, much more expensive than ours. We can build things that the Americans would never imagine. India can do that. So that would be the first part of a president's address. We would talk to the youngsters in India and say to them, we want you to be partners in this revolution. We want to change the Indian banking system so you can have access to it. And we believe in you, we trust in you, and we believe you can take on the Chinese. That's the first part. The second part would be about participation. We have done a caste census in Telangana, and what we have found is shocking. Almost 90% of Telangana is either Dalit, Adivasi, backward, or minority. Almost 90%. And I am convinced that that is the story across the country. I am absolutely convinced that the OBC population of this country is not one less than 50%, possibly 55%. 16% are Dalits, 9% are Adivasis, 15% are minorities. Last budget, there was a photograph. You remember the photograph?
Of course.
वो मक्खन बांटने वाली, हलवा बांटने वाली फोटो. मैं हैरान हो गया कि इस बार फोटो ही हटा दी. हलवा खिलाया मगर दिखाया नहीं किसको खिलाया.
नेता प्लीज.
तो So at the center of any new development paradigm for this country, which runs parallel with the production paradigm I spoke of, which works together with the production paradigm I spoke of, is the participation of lower castes, OBCs, Dalits, Adivasis in the wealth of this country. If we look at the largest corporates in this country, they're all owned. None of them are owned by OBCs. None of them are owned by Dalits. None of them are owned by tribals. If we look at the biggest media companies that support the Prime Minister, every day we see the Prime Minister's pleasant face, smiling face on these media. None of them are owned by OBCs. None of them are owned by Dalits. None of them are owned by Adivasis. This is the fact. So central to any new development paradigm is the architecture of a new paradigm. And that architecture of the new paradigm can only be built once the caste census is placed on this day. Because once the caste census is placed on the table, we will know exactly how much of this country's wealth, how much of this country's power, how many of this country's institutions are owned by 90% of this country. There are OBC MPs in the BJP. There are OBC MPs in the BJP. There are Dalit MPs in the BJP. There are Adivasi MPs in the BJP. Remember, you are OBCs, you have 50% of the population, and you have absolutely no power. I know that you're sitting there and you cannot even open your mouth. That is the truth of the country.
प्रधानमंत्री का चेहरा आपको दिखाई नहीं देता है?
जाति जनगणना,
प्रधानमंत्री का चेहरा आपको दिखाई नहीं देता है?
आर्किटेक्चर, participation, revolution in this country that we're going to bring.
ये अंधेरा हो गया है।
पार्लियामेंट में है।
ये कुछ दिखता नहीं है।
सोनिया गांधी, प्रियंका,
ये इधर ऑपोजिशन को कुछ दिखाई नहीं देता है। ओबीसी बात करते हैं।
So the idea is, Speaker sir, the idea. Speaker sir, so the idea is, on one side, allow India and the Indian youngsters to participate in the coming mobility revolution. Allow them to participate in building robots, in building drones, in building electronic items, in building EVs. And on the other side, running parallel.
मैंने उनको ही मना
The country, Speaker sir.
ऐसा नहीं है। आप भी बहुत डिस्टर्बेंस करते हैं।
Okay, Speaker sir. So parallel ideas. One idea: participate in the mobility revolution. Whether you're thinking of economy, weapons, production, healthcare, India should participate in this revolution. India should become the master of the electric motor, master of the battery, master of optics, and master of AI applied on top of that production system. Now imagine the power of AI when we apply it to the caste census. You imagine what we will do with AI and what we will do with the social revolution in this country when we start to apply AI on the data that we get from the caste census. So we are going to run a parallel track. On one side, participation, revolutionizing the participation of Dalits, OBCs, Adivasis in the in the ruling of this country, in the institutions of this country, in distribution of wealth of this country, and on the other side, parallel track, challenge the Chinese and participate in the revolution and defeat the Chinese in electric motors, batteries, solar panels, and wind. So that is the first two parts of any presidential election address that any India Gathbandhan leader would give you. The final, of course, we go back to the Constitution. This, our favorite, just like the production system is a weapon, just like Jati Jangarna is a weapon of transformation, this is what the entire architecture is built on. I remember before the elections, all of you were saying 400 par, and you were saying you would change this. And then I was glad to see that the Prime Minister walked in and then was forced to bow his head in front of the Constitution. It was a moment of pride for all Congress people that we had explained to the Prime Minister and to the whole country that no force will dare touch this. I know that the RSS has never accepted this. Mohan Bhagwatji has said that India didn't get independence in 1947. He has said that this constitution is meaningless. I know that that is at your heart. We will never let your dream come true. This constitution is going to rule India always. Now,
एक मिनट आप प्रतिपक्ष के नेता हैं, मेरा आपसे आग्रह है कि जो विषय आप रखें वह तथ्यों पर आधार पर रखें, उचित होगा। मैंने आपको पहले भी कहा, और जो सदन के सदस्य नहीं हैं उनकी चर्चा न करें।
सर बताता हूं, सर मोहन भागवत
आप नियम प्रक्रियाओं की पालन करें, आपसे अपेक्षा।
सर मोहन भागवत जी ने स्टेटमेंट दिया।
मोहन भागवत का
Speaker sir, Mohan Bhagwat ji made a statement saying that India did not receive independence in 1947. It received independence when the Ram Mandir was inaugurated. We will place that on the table. Now, sir, I would like to mention one small thing, but very important thing. Speaker sir, this constitution is supported by this constitution is supported by the vote of our people. Without the secure vote of the Indian people, this constitution means nothing. Now I want to bring to the notice of this House some data, some information about the Maharashtra election. Very simple stuff. Speaker sir, between the Lok Sabha election, which the India Alliance won, and the Vidhan Sabha election, the voting population of Himachal Pradesh was added to the voting roll of Maharashtra. Meaning the entire population of Himachal Pradesh was added to the voter rolls of Maharashtra. Please understand what I am saying. In Lok Sabha, the difference between Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha was the population of Himachal. The entire population. Almost 70 lakh new voters suddenly arrived between Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha. Now, the most interesting part, and the Prime Minister is not looking at me. The most interesting part, the most interesting part is Sir, Maharashtra mein more voters were added in 5 months in Maharashtra than were added in 5 years in Maharashtra. जितने 5 साल में ऐड हुए उससे ज्यादा 5 महीने में ऐड हुए, आखिरी 5 महीने में लोकसभा चुनाव के बाद। सर, एक बिल्डिंग है सर शिरडी में, एक बिल्डिंग में 7,000 नए वोटर एक बिल्डिंग में ऐड हुए सर। एक बिल्डिंग में 7,000 नए वोटर ऐड हुए सर। सर, मैं कोई आरोप नहीं लगा रहा हूं, मैं कोई आरोप नहीं लगा रहा हूं, मैं सिर्फ ये कह रहा हूं सर कि इसमें कुछ ना कुछ प्रॉब्लमैटिक है कि हिमाचल प्रदेश जितने बड़े वोटर्स लोकसभा के बाद जादू से आ जाते हैं। अब हम क्या कह रहे हैं, हमने इलेक्शन कमीशन से रिपीटेडली कहा है कि हम आरोप नहीं लगा रहे हैं, आप एक काम कीजिए, हमें लोकसभा की वोटर लिस्ट दे दीजिए, नेम, एड्रेस और इलेक्ट्रॉनिकली दीजिए, और विधानसभा नहीं है। नहीं सर, नहीं 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 नहीं। स्पीकर सर,
वो सब वेबसाइट पे रहती है, सब जानते हैं, कभी भी कोई निकाल सकता है।
स्पीकर सर, मैं समझा देता हूं सर। स्पीकर सर, वो Speaker sir, we have asked. Speaker sir. Speaker sir, we are asking this question. We are asking this. Speaker sir, population of Himachal Pradesh. Please. Population of Himachal Pradesh has voted. Extra has voted in Maharashtra. We are saying to the Election Commission, please give us the names and addresses and polling booths of all the workers in the Lok Sabha and all the workers in the Vidhan Sabha, so we can calculate who these new workers are, who these new voters are. Interestingly, the new voters are mostly in the constituencies that the BJP has swept. Please understand.